Community Connection on KGNB, brought to you by Waters International Realty.
This is Paige Green with our Community Connection. We're here with Eloise Hudson from CASA. Eloise, how are you?
Good. How are you today, Paige?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. So tell me, what is CASA?
CASA is court-appointed special advocates, and we are a local nonprofit organization. Our job is to find and train and support anyone in the community who wants to get involved with children that have been removed from their homes because of abuse or neglect. So we're here to support average community members if they want to get involved and really make a difference in children's lives right here in Central Texas.
So what does specifically a court-appointed special advocate do?
When a child is brought into CPS care, there is a judge overseeing that case. And if that judge decides that there's a lot going on or this child could really benefit from someone watching out for them, the judge comes to our program, CASA of Central Texas, to see if we have a volunteer available that has already been screened and trained and is ready to be appointed to a case. Once that volunteer is appointed to that child who is currently in Child Protective Services care, our volunteers, because they are appointed by the judge, have the legal authority to go participate in parent-teacher conferences, visit the children in their placement if that's a foster home or maybe placed with safe relatives, talk to therapists. Really, anyone that the child interacts with, our volunteers make contact with those people and gather as much information as they can. And then they are responsible for providing recommendations to the judge, what is in the best interest of that child, every time the judge has to make decisions.
Special advocates are all volunteers through CASA. What is the process like to get involved with CASA as a volunteer?
Becoming a CASA volunteer is going to our website, filling out an application, kind of telling us a little bit about yourself. Our volunteers go through a 6-week, once a week for 6-week training program. They are sworn in and then they are officially appointed to the case. The training's great, but it's also kind of abstract. You're learning about going to court and writing court reports and parties on a case. So once our volunteers are appointed to those cases, they are matched up with what we have casework supervisors. So our volunteers are never alone. After training, they're matched up with those supervisors, and they are there to support them every way of the case. So you don't have to be a former CPS worker, attorney, or law enforcement. The training will get you up to speed, and then we'll support you the whole way through.
As a volunteer, a special advocate volunteer for CASA, what can you kind of expect when you just jump on board for the first time?
So the first time that you accept a case, you'll meet with that casework supervisor, and they'll kind of go over the basics, give you some real tangible steps. How about within the next 2 weeks, we go visit the child, get to know them and their placement. Within the next week, why don't you email their attorney? Here's the address. Introduce yourself. Let's go down to the CPS office and read a case history. So the beginning of the case is really getting to know everyone, feeling your way out and getting comfortable as an actual CASA volunteer. From there, court meets about once every 3 months to get an update on how the child is doing and what should we focus on for the next 3 months. So our volunteers spend the interim between court hearings, as I mentioned, talking to teachers, talking to therapists, talking to foster placements, because at those hearings, the judge is going to have to make some big decisions, but also some smaller decisions that may not seem important in the big scheme of things, but to that individual child, they are important. So if that child needs math tutoring, for example, because she's been in 4 placements in the last 2 years and she's falling behind, our volunteers can find out from the teachers what resources are available at the school. Then the volunteer can go to court and say, Judge, I think that this child needs extra math tutoring. Can you please make it a court order? Once that court order is made, then it can be paid for by CPS, and foster placements can be required to transport that child to tutoring. So that tutoring is needed, and the judge will appoint or court order that, but the judge doesn't even know to do that because they are responsible for hundreds of children, whereas our volunteers are appointed to one case at a time, so they really have time to get to know those children and make those recommendations to the judge.
Right. It's very one-on-one and very situational. You're learning that specific child situation. And you mentioned you don't have to be a previous CPS worker or really have a lot of knowledge, but what type of people are you looking for when you ask for volunteers?
Our main minimum requirement is that you do have to be over 21, pass a couple of different background checks, and once you do that, we will do the rest of the training. We're looking to anyone who can commit 1 year. These cases, according to the Texas Family Code, do have to have closure at 1 year. And so while we do know that life happens, that's why you have those supervisors so they can step in, we do ask that you accept a case at least anticipating that you can serve a year. And that's because our volunteers become a consistent, not just for the children as they're moving placement to placement, school to school, but also for the adults in their lives. As I mentioned, a child could be coming to a new school, the fourth one in a couple of years. Our volunteers can talk to those teachers and find out and let them know what was working for them at the previous school, what resources they had there. So that is another big one for us, is at least anticipating a 1 year commitment. Other than that, there is no average CASA volunteer. All of our kids have their own CPS workers, they have their own attorneys. So we're really looking for average community members who can come in and say, you know, I know that's what CPS says, I know that's what the attorney says, I know that's what the Texas Family Code says, but common sense says this is what's best for this child.
And Eloise, you've mentioned multiple times you have training coming up. Now, is this something that you do kind of frequently, or is this a more one-off training?
Well, our training is 6 weeks, so it is only offered, enough times throughout the year that we can fit that in. So I would recommend, if this sounds interesting to you and our training schedule fits, that is the biggest chunk of time that you have to commit, because it's either once a week, every Wednesday or every Thursday. We have a Saturday course coming up. So that is the biggest commitment. So if you go to our website, CASASendText.org, you can see the rest of our trainings throughout the year and see which one fits into your schedule best. Because once you complete the training, you can tell us, I can't take a case for another month or another week. But once you get training done, then that lets us know that you are ready to take on a case.
And that was CASASendText.org. Eloise, do you know kind of the deadline to start applying to make this upcoming training?
Yes, we're coming up on our deadline very shortly, so I would suggest you get those applications in, but we will have another training session this year. So if you can't get into this one, don't worry, you won't have to wait too long. It does take a while to get the background checks done anyway, so get your application in now if you're interested in the end of August training, early September training, and then again, we will have one more training session before the end of the year.
How many volunteers does CASA have, or how many volunteers does it take to fill Central Texas with special advocates?
Sure. So last year, we were able to serve 562 children with our 4-county area. So we serve all of the children in Comal, Guadalupe, Hays, and Caldwell County. So between the 4, we serve 562 children, which translates to 65% of the children who are in the state's care. So that left about 300 children who are out there without a CASA volunteer. Now, our goal is to say yes every time the judge comes to us and says, is there a CASA volunteer available? But last year we had 255 volunteers, so we just weren't able to serve the whole 871 children in care. So we're definitely actively looking for more volunteers because every time a volunteer takes a case, that is one more child that we're able to serve.
Eloise Hudson from CASA. You can apply at CASASendText.org. Do you have any more information or anything you would like to share about CASA?
Just that we know that a lot of people out there would be qualified volunteers, but they don't even know we exist. So if you're listening, you can go to any of our social media channels at CASA SendText, follow us and share, because you never know. You probably have a friend that will say, hey, I've been thinking about doing this. I saw you share it. What do you think about it? So even if becoming a CASA volunteer is not for you, you can still support us by helping us get the word out.
Again, that was Eloise Hudson from CASA. You can learn more about CASA and applying to be a volunteer on their website, CASASendText.org.